Brutal. It was. It's just.
Good evening and welcome to the Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, March 29th. Our agenda this evening, 7 o'clock, is citizens' input. 7:05, we will hear from Superintendent Louis Lopes from the Southeastern Regional VOTEC, the 2012 Southeastern Regional Budget. 7:25, we'll speak about road repairs. 7:50, the 2012 CIP operating budget with the school committee. At 8:50, the town manager will speak on license fee scheduling. And at 9 o'clock, we will go into executive session to discuss real property negotiations, litigation, and review of executive session minutes. So can we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, Larry?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Time being 7 o'clock, citizens' input. Dick?
I think I should take a vacation. You'll probably all agree with me. Just a couple of quick items before we get into the budget later. I'm enthusiastic about the fact that we have several items on the agenda.
I think we're having technical difficulties right now.
Okay, no problem. What I'd like to just tap into is a couple of general comments, which I think are quite pertinent. Well, they're particular. One is the agenda issue. I know we gave you copies of Coakley's memos that are on the web. I haven't seen any change except this enthusiasm about the 5 or 6 items scheduled for 7:50 as part of the budget discussion, which I am very pleased about, to be honest with you. But there's several other items that I've been bringing up either here or in the emails with you. I think still need some time to get cleared up. With the budget coming up at 7:50 or so, I had asked to try and get some determination of definitions of COLA, the steps, and the longevity, especially as older contracts in town never had COLA. The COLA was never there. The raises that were discussed were always in the steps or in longevity. They had nothing to do with COLA until COLA came in, and then all of a sudden the rationale apparently of some of the bargaining units was COLA was the raise. We can forget about the other two. They'll come along because we'll have the COLA raise, and that takes care of it. But I'd like to get some determination from your board as the governing board as to exactly what is meant by these items so that when we get the voter in town meeting, we have a clearer picture of what our executive board says is the issues.
Well, Dick, I want to stop you for a moment. I have all your emails, items, and what we've been trying to do is take them a bit at a time, because there are other items that we have to deal with on a, every other week, and that's what we have to do. So we're trying to get to all these things, and.
Okay, no question. I won't get into these except as the budget session later covers.
Right.
But there was one item left over from last week that has bugged the hell out of me. I'll be very candid about it. The availability of records to a voter, to a taxpayer, or to any individual requesting same was discussed at some length that, you have to pay all kinds of money, you have to schedule it, we don't have time. The statute was mentioned. I love going to the statute. I hate reading statute. It is the most convoluted mess you ever heard. However, the first sentence in the records as part of the statute says, and I'm quoting, "Every person having custody of any public record shall, at reasonable times and without unreasonable delay, permit it or any segregable portion of a record which is an independent public record to be inspected and examined by any person under his supervision. Comma. I highlight the comma because this other phrase doesn't really connect but connects. And shall furnish one copy thereof upon payment of a reasonable fee. If I don't request a copy, I'm still entitled to see it and see the record as requested. There's a second part of this in the second section of that bylaw, which says within 10 days. Within 10 days. The local bylaw is just as simple. And I recall statements from you collectively or individually to Kevin to work it out. And Kevin was going to get involved and get the thing resolved. And then I get the message that a determination was given to the building committee and the library trustees from Town Hall. I don't know who else gives determinations from Town Hall. You're the only body that I would understand. I will chase it.
Again, I don't know what determination is. There is a bylaw that sets up the building committee. Yep. And the bylaw is very clear.
You spoke about that at the
and
last
very
meeting.
plain. I gave a copy of that bylaw to Jerry, the chairman of the library trustees, and a copy to the chairman of the building, Bill.
Jeff.
And I'm sorry, Jeff, and to Bill. And the bylaw very clearly puts the building committee in an advisory role. We talked about that here. Everybody saw the bylaw when everybody was here in the joint meeting. Now, I don't know if that's the determination, quote unquote, that's being discussed. There was no legal opinion given that I'm aware of. There was no vote of the board. There was no written opinion from the town manager. There was just the bylaw that everybody read, and everybody agreed immediately. Now, one thing y'all recall was that Jeff, who is an attorney, wrote a very precise opinion and said basically he corroborated or agreed with everyone else's opinion that the bylaw put the building committee in a advisory role, contrary to the role they've been in traditionally, but nonetheless the bylaw does that. Now that might be the quote-unquote opinion because he did take the time to actually put that in writing and wrote a very, very scholarly, insightful opinion. But I'm guessing.
Well, the point is, members of the building committee still have their necks out of joint, and they'd like to get it straightened out.
It's not going to get straightened out. It's the building committee and the library board that has to straighten it out. They came here, we had the meeting, we tried to intervene. I have no idea if we're successful or not, but we have no authority, not the board and not the town manager. We cannot give directives to either party. They each have their roles in statute and bylaw, and if they choose to cooperate, it will be their choice. It will not be the product of any directives coming out of here.
Historically, it has been directives from the Board of Selectmen as the appointing authority of the Building Commission. That has been historic. That's what I relate to, former member,
board.
chairman, what have you. This was the way things were handled. Well, enough on that at this point. The last issue before is again very, very simple. The new parking lot up on Payson Road, adjacent to the auditorium on town land with public money is for what purpose? I'm still trying to figure this out, especially as the seniors have been looking at the assembly building as possibly their future home as opposed to the laundry, which should be terminated post-haste. If the parking lot is being developed and it's under construction, I saw the equipment up there. People at Town Hall have told me it's under construction. I've seen it. It inhibits how the seniors may envision their future home, if indeed this is their future home. The paving is right up on the police side of the building and behind the building, and the only green belt they have is now on the north side, which fall, spring, and winter can't be used. where the parking lot's going
Let me help
in.
Dick with this, because it's not really, that is not really this board's business. That's being directed by the planning board. It's a state grant, a Public Works Economic Development grant, PWED grant, so-called. And its parking lot's being built essentially to help both the developer meet his parking quotas, as well as provide additional parking for the public safety complex. It was absolutely not built with any intended use of the auditorium building as a senior center or anything else. So it doesn't have that in mind. It wasn't written with that in mind. But if you have an issue with that, Dick, you really need to take that to the planning board. They are managing that project.
The question was building on public land to suit a private developer with public funds, and then we are still responsible for the parking or any accidents that occur within there, used by a private developer or their tenants at Chestnut Green or the shopping center. It's a question in my mind, the appropriateness of a town getting involved in a private developer's parking lot. It's 134 cars. It's a hell of a big lot. But anyway, enough said. I will take your advice. I can talk to the planning board, and we can move on. I thank you again.
Thanks, Dick. Okay. Southeastern, come up. Move that chair so that Dan can fit in at the table. Just move that chair for Dan and come right up. Thanks.
You can take my mic. I love getting rid of it.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
The superintendent couldn't make it tonight, but my name is Mark Morris, business manager for the school.
Mark?
Morris. Do you have a copy of the budget? Did you get one in advance, or? Doesn't look like it. I brought mine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
I think you know what's in here. Thank you. It's not here. Okay. You have this in here? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I know we're on a tight schedule. I'm going to hit some of the key points of our budget. I can go into as much detail or as little as you like. Stop me anywhere you like, but again, if you want, I'll just hit some key points off of that. If you want to go to the second to last page in the handout. And if you go roughly halfway down, we'll see the town of Foxborough. You can see that Foxborough's enrollment ratio at Southeastern is 2.2% of our enrollment, with a minimum contribution of $313,013. Again, we're at minimum contribution, we're at the foundation budget, and as you can see, the next column where it has additional operating costs, we're asking for zero there. So Southeastern's asking for zero additional operating costs to any of the towns or the city. In the next column, you see the net transportation, which is our regional transportation, which, as we know, the state is to fund at 100% back to the towns. This is the town's money. Unfortunately, with the state and the situation they're in, it's always based on appropriation and subject to appropriation, and unfortunately, they don't have the money at this time to fund it at 100%. So we're basing funding on this year's reimbursement rate of 54%, which is at a 16% decrease from last year. So Foxborough's amount would be looking at $10,584, with their net capital costs of $192,000 that we assess to the towns, and that would be $4,146 to Foxborough. And then in our post-secondary program that we have over at the school, Foxborough has 6 students that are enrolled. So what we do is with our post-secondary education tuition, we actually reimburse to the towns based on their enrollment ratio. So this year, at $125,000 being reimbursed, Foxborough will receive $7,813 of that, based on their enrollment of 6 students, bringing their FY12 assessment to $319,930. And if we look down in the second section of the page, that would be an increase of $19,374 from last year. And if we want to go to the second page, I can go over with you how our budget was built. As you can see, our foundation budget being $19,791,640, and if you look at the page right below that, that's the actual number given to us by the Department of Education. That number is made up of state aid at $12,628,459, and local assessments of $7,163,181, with a difference of $225,000 coming from our E&D account, giving us an operating budget of $20,016,640. The next section breaks down our transportation costs. Total cost being $1,085,505, with the state reimbursement at 54%, giving us $595,376, and the local assessments of $490,129. Our account for capital expenditures throughout the school being $292,192 coming from local assessments, and $100,000 from our excess and deficiency account, E&D account. And in that last section, you see the reimbursement to the towns from local assessments of $125,000 from our post-secondary education account. I don't know if you have any questions that you'd like me to go into detail with, or I can just continue breaking down our budget.
Does anybody have any questions so far?
No, I would just ask Dan for his thoughts. I know he puts a lot of time and effort, and just give us an overview of your thoughts on the budget. And
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Chairwoman. Thank you for having us here tonight. I just wanted to highlight just a couple of points that Mark mentioned. We're doing a $30 million MSBA project, similar to like Foxborough, but a little bit of a larger scope. We're getting 80% reimbursement, unlike Foxborough at 49 and some change. I call it 50%. So we're getting a much better reimbursement rate, which if you look at when Mark says minimum foundation spending, that is what the state tells us what we have to charge. So if we went to before town meeting and said we'd like to lower this budget by $100, you wouldn't be able to do it other than with the $192,000 that we haven't raised that figure in 10 or 11 years. That E&D, that excess and deficiency account, is like the CIP budget. We can't go back to every community in the middle of the year, so we budget that ahead of time. Between that money is what we're using to float that bond, that note, for the extra 20%, which I believe is like a 20 or 25 year.
25 years.
25 year. So it's a relatively short note, and it's, like I said, it's not costing the sending communities anything, and we do reimburse, which I thought it was a percentage, but it's by post-secondary numbers. Having been at the State House all day, the numbers possibly could look a little worse than what they're projecting. I spoke to Representative Barrows today, and I don't want to mention any numbers, but it doesn't seem like the numbers that we may have been figuring on. With that said, that may affect our transportation cost. And as I said last year, we eliminated our 230 bus, so we have periods 9 and 10 with about an 85% participation rate, which is I think is tremendous. So I think right now we're solid. It all depends on Chapter 70 and how the governor waves his magic wand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I'd like to do is, once we're done with the budget, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to go over the MSBA project, and that's a second handout.
Okay.
But let's take care of the budget for
Yep.
any questions you have.
So just for the public, so Foxborough's assessment is $319,000 for FY12?
I'm sorry, we're, $319,930,
Okay,
which is a $19,374 increase from last year.
okay. And we have 29 students there.
Correct, 29 students, same as last year, yes.
Okay. If I was sitting at home, that's something I'd like
No,
to be
definitely.
interested in, yeah.
Yeah, enrollment for Foxborough has stayed the same, 29 students. that didn't change.
Question for you. So you presumably track who goes on to 2- and 4-year colleges and then employment, right?
Correct.
So what are those kinds of statistics? Do you know those?
I don't have those
Off the top
offhand,
of
but
my
I
head.
could get that from guidance for you.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Just generally speaking, like what do some of the graduates do? Like what do you guys consider success?
Actually, a lot of the graduates that we just had a report done in one of our school communities are going on to either 2-year or 4-year programs. And there was actually a Harvard study that was in the Boston Globe saying that the vocational schools are doing actually a good job in that area, where graduation rates are. A lot of kids are going out to the trade, but a lot are going on to a 2-year or 4-year program and continuing their education versus going right into the workforce.
What are the just the?
Don't
Oh, I'm
quote
sorry.
me on it, but I think it's around 50, greater than 50%. There's a research paper out by the Pioneer Institute. It's called a white paper, and matter of fact, the Sun Chronicle did an article on vocational education a few weeks ago in the Sunday paper, and they quoted some of those statistics out of there. Obviously, it's all vocational schools, but I think we're right around 50% that are going on to post-secondary, which we have to meet. We have to meet AYP. We have to meet MCAS.
Right.
Regional school today is not. It's more difficult than going to a college prep school.
And I have a neighbor whose son actually goes to an agricultural vocational school. So yours isn't the only game in town, is it?
No, and if you look at one of the handouts that you have there, it comes out. If you look on the second page, the third page, Foxborough has their comprehensive high school, Southeastern, and Norfolk County, which is the agricultural.
Okay, that's where he goes. Yeah.
Is
Well,
that-
I just think it's interesting because if you know your son or daughter is interested in a trade, what a great opportunity instead of if you don't want to take honors English. Well, you probably have that there.
Well, I was
actually.
gonna say-
So actually that's probably I'm
Years
getting
ago,
ahead of
that
myself.
was the great push for the vocational school, but today it's, even if you want honors English, we offer that. We have college preparatory classes where kids
I'm glad I
can get
misspoke
ready,
then. That's good. Yeah.
and they can be prepared for college, whether it be in engineering or technology or whatever field they choose.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we do have those programs available as well.
Paul, we're very high on the STEM initiative, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Just the same way Foxborough is. We're probably a little more technology geared, and virtual high school, AP courses. So when you look at a trade school today, it's. I was impressed. Let me tell you, when you look at a college prep school versus a vocational school that gives you that type of opportunity is just tremendous.
Right.
And it's a shame that not that many residents in Foxborough take advantage of it, but it's it's MCAS, it's everything else that Foxborough has to meet. So I'm very, very satisfied.
Thanks.
Mark, question. I think it was 2 years ago, Mr. Lopes came in front of, when I was on the advisory committee,
Okay.
and gave a nice presentation. And it stuck in my mind when he started, he said, it's tough times, and we're not in a position to come and ask Foxborough for any
Correct.
more money. And he went through a number of cost-cutting measures that they were going to implement with the teachers and the buses and the routes.
Okay.
Can you comment on any of the recent stuff that you're doing for cost control? Or is that, I know I'm catching you off guard,
No,
but is that something
cost
that-
control, what we've done is, we knew that, again, FY12 is going to be a tough year. We did have the Ed Jobs grant money that came in last year. We only used 48% of our Ed Jobs money, holding it off for FY12, knowing that that would be one of the concerns. Again, we could have used that all last year, but preparing ourselves and cutting back on costs, we've gone through that Ed Jobs, and we have 48% that we used, leaving us 52% for FY12. So again, that allows us to not cut any positions, to keep the positions we have in place. What we did do is we had a warehouse that was full of supplies, that they've been depleting the supplies. We're using those supplies first before we go out and purchase any new supplies. We're looking at different measures through health insurance and things of that nature where we can maybe save. Again, health insurance is one of the biggest factors, one of the biggest increases in the budget. So we're looking at different measures there, whether it be with co-pays, different splits. Again, that's all things that, we have to negotiate, but that's things we're looking at to control our costs.
Yeah, I remember there was also, they were talking about reevaluating the bus routes and
And we did that
things
with
like
periods
that.
9 and 10, as
9
Ian
and 10.
stated earlier.
Okay.
We did away with the periods of the extended day. We can do away with our 2:30 bus.
That's what I remember, yeah.
We
I thought
eliminate
that
that
stuck in
bus
my mind, yep.
by having the additional extended day.
Jim, I'm on a subcommittee too, and we did cut I want to say $75,000 approximately from our technology. Being a technology guru, we hated to do that, but and then between that and it's also an equipment subcommittee that instead of going out and purchasing a new front-end loader due to liability, I believe that one is 20 years old, the one we have, Mark?
Correct.
We went out and we did a lease-to-buy program instead, rather than lay out all that capital at once. So, the list goes on like that, where obviously, we are under tight times, and what I'm afraid is the bad news we're going to get from the state. So, we may be back here again.
But what it allows us to make those cuts is, and again, going back to MSBA, with the MSBA project on board,
Yep.
those are things we might be able to get reimbursed through the MSBA.
Through
so
their
we've held
program.
off on those
Okay.
things. So again, if
So you
we
give
get
it up now and you
reimbursed,
get it on the other side, maybe.
again, we'll get 80 cents on the dollar on that if we wait. So.
Great. All right, thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Kevin?
Just one note. First, it's good to meet you guys.
No, thank you.
I've been associated with this vocational school for many, many years. I was town administrator in Easton for 15 years, and now I'm in Foxborough. And I didn't tell the board, but you probably already know, which is the school does an outstanding job educating men and women, young men and women in vocational arts. Does a terrific job. And I have no concerns with the budget this year. I do want to echo some concerns of the board and offer my own cautionary note. I note that the budget is up 4.6% this year overall. The assessments are only up 2.9, which is good. Foxborough's budget, by comparison, at least that portion of it, which is attributable to the part of the budget we control, if you will be up, depending what the board decides later tonight, probably 1%, maybe less. I also note that your budget maintains current staffing levels. Health insurance is a big concern. Going forward, we will lose employees this year. Foxborough will lose employees. Every other of your member communities are losing employees. The ability of the member communities to sustain current staffing levels going forward is not possible. We will not be able to do it. You know what I would offer to you folks is to start taking a look at downsizing staff, because the reality is your member communities are all doing it. You're going to have to do it. I know that's not good news. I know it doesn't come as welcome news, but I also tell you that if you folks don't do it, if we have a budget again next year that goes up 5%, you will probably see some considerable pushback. With town budgets, member community budgets going up in the range of 1%, we're going down. We can't possibly continue to have a regional school budget that goes up, 4, 5, 6 times what our budgets are going up. It's simply unsustainable. And that's the bad news. And I don't see anything changing it for the next year or two. That's the reality. Hopefully we get some news on the health insurance side if the legislature finally decides to give us some tools, and you can make some moves. But I can't emphasize enough, this town is cutting its budget. Every member community is cutting its budget. You guys are not going to be able to maintain current staffing, provide raises, step increase, health insurance, OPEB, pensions. You can't do it. We can't do it. You're going to have to get this lower.
Can I just comment on that, if you don't mind? Our increase, if you look at back on page 3, our enrollment has increased from last year. So that's what increases our budget roughly by 4.68%. Again, we're at foundation minimum. So that number given to us is given us by the Department of Education. So that's not a number that we can go out and say we've increased positions or done that in that nature. That's by the department.
How many students?
6 students, correct. So 6 students, and then if you look back on page 2, they give you the per pupil budget cost.
But again, I don't want to be argumentative. 6 students, which is a tiny, tiny percent, does not justify a 5% budget increase. I do budgets for a living.
No, definitely.
I know how this works.
No, definitely. But I just wanted to,
I'm not being critical of your budget this year. You did a great job. All I'm telling you is, if it comes in 4 or 5% next year, there will most assuredly be an organized pushback. It cannot be that high next year. It can't. We can't afford to do it. We're cutting our budgets. All your member communities are doing the same thing. It's just not possible.
Okay. I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that we did have an increase of students.
I'm just telling you what you're going to hear.
No, and I appreciate it very much, no.
I'm the guy who gets paid to give the bad news, and I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate it.
But
Just a quick question for you, tying back to that. On the health insurance,
Yes.
what is the split between employees?
70-30 for current and 50-50 for retirees.
Okay, and then what are your co-pays?
10, 25, and 35.
Okay.
OV, office visit,
15.
good, you're a little better than us.
And
Good
that's
for you.
Well, I can't reveal too much, but we're in negotiations right now. I'm on the negotiation committee, so rest assured that I'm looking at those numbers very hard. And hopefully last year, we were going to have tools that the governor was going to give us, but he didn't. And that was on the agenda for today, as well as be able to go revisit that. So Thursday's our third meeting, and that's our last meeting to bring up topics that are supposed to be discussed. And we're taking a real close look at that.
Indicative of the good work you guys do, and I was referencing earlier, you're way ahead of us in the area of co-pays, so kudos to you guys.
Good, thank you.
And again, I wasn't here last year for last year's presentation, but we did make cuts in last year's personnel. So again, so we did make our cuts last year, and then with the Ed Jobs money, we were able to maintain again. If it wasn't for the Ed Jobs money, we would have been looking at making cuts again this year. But with that federal money that came in, we were able to maintain.
And we did, was it approximately 13 teachers the last year, that if it wasn't for that stimulus money, we spent our stimulus money the first year, where you could have spread it over 2 years, and that was to keep all those positions.
The difficult part with that stimulus money, and we're seeing that here too, is you get used to it for the 2 years you
one-time
have
money.
it. It's one-time money,
Exactly.
and now you've got the people that you've got to pay the year that you don't have the stimulus money, so it presents a real hole for you when you get done. It's nice to have a cushion, but it's very painful when it stops.
Correct. And again, so I just wanted to,
You had to pull 5.5 salaries that were formally grant funded into the budget this year.
and we were able to do that with the Ed funds.
exactly that Larry's point.
Exactly, because it's a one-time money, correct.
Right.
But those positions were set up as one-year positions, but being that we had the Ed job, we were able to keep them again.
Right, but part of the reason for the increase, going back to Kevin's point, is that when that money goes away, all things being equal,
You have
you're
to
going to
come
see
up with
those
the
big increases, which makes it difficult because at some point, you have to let the positions go, and because there's only so much money,
So
and
what we
that's the
do,
tough part.
what we're looking at next year is, like you mentioned, the 5.5. If that money is not in place, or if there's no federal money, we're looking at a decrease of roughly 5.5.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's looking for you folks to do more than we do.
No, exactly.
We're just looking for you to mirror what we're doing.
Yeah, my only concern I want to stress is that we are, again, at foundation, because we have the required net school spending, and we're not above foundation. So, again, and as Dan iterated earlier, that's based on the Chapter 70 formula, so it's not that we say, we want to be at 20 million. We have to be at that, our net school spending.
Okay. Yeah.
Just one comment, Linda.
Yeah.
Just so the people at home heard clearly what you just said. It is interesting for the state to dictate where you must be, as you just said.
Correct.
On the other hand, when you talked about your transportation reimbursement that's supposed to be 100%, they said, well, we can't afford it, so we're going to only give you less. So it's difficult for the taxpayer to have a government, whether it be the state or the local, put mandates on and then not fund them.
Larry, that was the biggest thing on the agenda was unfunded mandates.
It's today's legislative.
And there's a little parenthesis at the end of that transportation cost where it says by appropriation, so they don't have to, if they don't have the funds every year to, and I think last year they threatened to hold back, was it $1.5 million?
From reimbursement.
From reimbursement, and then through public pressure, they
Right.
ended up letting that money come back to the community, so.
So if you played by the same rules, and you went back to the state and said, well, your foundation is X, but the towns that support us have said they're only going to pay it 95%, what are you going to do to us?
They hold out Chapter 78.
And so that's the part that's very difficult.
Exactly.
They hold you on the one end, but then they don't live up to their commitments. And that's where we have to continue to work with Jay and others to make sure that if the state can't live up to its commitments on what it's promised to provide, then it has to provide relief on the other side as well. It can't hold the local community to a level that is beyond their capacity to fund, just because the state decided they weren't going to fund their piece.
Yeah, and again, that's where you have to get into with your legislatures, like you just
Yeah.
mentioned. And get, again, they're aware.
Yeah. Oh, I know they're aware.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Folks?
Do you want to give him just 2 minutes to talk about his renovation?
Oh, yeah.
If you just have, if you have a minute. The school's in the process right now with the MSBA of doing a $32.9 million renovation. We actually go to the MSBA tomorrow, hopefully to get our final approval on our scope and budget. With that being said, we're at 80%, we're actually over 80% reimbursement, but they cap it at 80%, so we can't get more than 80%. We've already met that quota, and we've been told to be at 80% reimbursement. So this project we're planning on doing will have no cost to any of the towns or the city. And you might ask how we're going to pay that. We're going to bond $6.1 or $6.2 million being paid with the $392,000 that we have aside every year, set aside for capital that we do put into the building currently. So that will pay the bond over the 25 years, with the difference coming from the MSBA of 80%. There's a quick summary there on the departments and the centers we will be attacking in the school. What I just want to let you know again, if we do get our approval tomorrow, the school committee meets Tuesday. If the school committee approves the project, the towns will be notified within 7 days that the project's been approved. Once the town's been notified, you'd have 30 days to have a special town meeting or town hearing if you choose. But again, you don't have to. The MSBA's made us aware that if the town decides not to, by taking no action is an affirmative action towards the project. And again, there'll be no debt exclusion or 2.5 proposition overrides or any cost to the towns. So I just want to reiterate that and let you know that up front.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Do you want to add anything to
No,
that,
that
Danny?
was that. That was perfect.
Okay. All righty. Anything else? Anybody?
No. Thank you very much for coming.
No, thank you very much for having us.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate that.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Knew your predecessor, Pat, real well.
Okay, and next we have Randy Scollins and Bob Swanson about road repairs. I'm not exactly sure what this is.
Yeah, Randy and Bob are here to help, but this is something that I think Larry had initiated, and it was kind of a general concern that we're not maintaining, we're not able, the only money that we devote to road repair every year is the amount of Chapter 90 money that we get, which is $450,000, maybe a little more this year. May go up by $100,000 thereabouts. The basic issue is at that level of expenditure per year, we're falling behind because that's not sufficient to keep pace with what we need. And I think it was Larry reflecting on that that initiated an agenda item to kind of have a general discussion with the board about what can we do. And I don't have any easy solutions, by the way. But I do agree, this winter in particular has been horrendously damaging to the roads. And so probably is more noticeable this year than in 2 or 3 or 4 years previous, that the roads are really in deteriorating condition. And even at $550 a year, we're not making it.
I think we had, a year or so ago, when we were talking, and we're kind of, Randy and Bob were here, and if they want to come up to the front, they're certainly more than welcome to come up to the front. But I think we were working off the back of an envelope, and we were kind of adding up how many miles we have in town and about what is an average road last 20 years and what's the average cost. And Bob, didn't we come up to something like we'd probably need $1 million a year just to kind of keep even?
Yeah, that would be a good sum.
More than double what we've been spending.
Yeah, between Chapter 90 and a small amount of money from the budget, we spend roughly just a little bit under $500,000. I have put in an extra CIP request the last few years for an additional $250,000, but that's been cut out due to budgetary problems.
Was that in, I didn't recall that this year. Was that in this year's request?
And I guess the part from my perspective, we don't even, number one, we don't have a repair or maintenance program. So it's hard to keep up with roads with patching and sealing and all that kind of stuff because you have so little money. You like if you take the work that you've done in the last couple of years, you're repairing roads. So we really need a preventative maintenance program as well as a reconstruction program. And we talked about that being roughly, maybe it's $1 million a year or something in that neighborhood. And the longer that we wait to do something, the more costly it is. Because if you don't have a preventative program, then eventually you're going to be replacing the roads or doing like you've done up in my neighborhood where you've done a third of the street, kind of 200 yards at a time, and you end up doing a lot of work in that sense. So one of the things that I had shared with Kevin a number of weeks ago, that from a personal viewpoint, I wasn't enamored with using a meals tax to fund operating expenses because things change and now you're stuck with ongoing kinds of things. But I had asked Kevin to think about if the town were to support something like that, could you take, and I know there's some logistics about how do you restrict money and that kind of thing, but would we be better off not using that for day-to-day operations and personnel and labor, headcount, but instead use it for capital because you could use it to fund roads. You could use it to fund OPEB. We've got a $60 million unfunded. But if the state changed in 3 years and said, that's gone now, you don't have that option, you could stop that, and it stops. You use it to fund 5 employees or 6 or 10 employees, and they stop it. Now you've got to get rid of those employees, and it's a hardship for everybody. So I had just asked Kevin to think about, as we are working through the road program, and we talked about possibly getting an intern to help us get an inventory of all of our streets, know how many miles we have, ballpark A, B, and C, streets that are in A condition, B condition, and C condition, and try to have the intern come up with, and there's software we're told that would help them, to help us understand what kind of condition the roads are really in compared to other towns as well, and what would make sense in terms of a program. And as you know, we have that on one of our goals and objectives. So if that's what it was tonight, I just had some talking to Kevin about, different funding options and said, I don't see that we're ever going to get the funding. But if, in fact, if the community felt that something like the meals tax made sense to them, it would seem to me that one of the arguments we might want to make is to commit that money to things like OPEB and things like road repair that we could start and stop as we needed. But at least, if we put it to roads, they're going to see real value. They're going to see the roads improve from what the condition is today, and they're only going down, not up. So even if it just stabilized the condition of the roads, it would be better. And if we put some of that money into OPEB and reduce that liability, that would certainly help the financial creditworthiness of the town as well. So I don't know whether you folks have talked about an intern or how much progress you've made or haven't made on kind of inventorying the conditions of the roads that we have today, but maybe you could update us on that.
Well, at the present time, I've had an engineering student in our employ. We haven't really done a lot of that, to be honest with you. When we last talked about that, we really had quite a winter with snow. For I think it was 6 weeks, I was working 15 hours for Plainville in an effort to really incubate and increase that regionalization and really help us reduce operating costs from that standpoint. And then in March, it just rained so much. And then we're trying to move the compost site from its present location to the landfill. I've had to submit an application to the state DEP for that. This year also, we really had a huge amount of extra work that I didn't anticipate on the Upper Carpenter Dam. Instead of bidding that with $150,000 that was appropriated for it, I looked at the plans, and I volunteered to use our excavation services bid to do that. But that drags me up there the whole time, and we did that. And it only cost $29,000 for that construction. So while we save a lot there, it certainly takes up a lot of my time. We had the Patriot Place money, and the planning board wanted to do Cross Street. That was $113,000, and the Patriots didn't want to reconstruct that road the way it really needed to be. They wanted to grind up existing pavement, put down new pavement. The problem with that road is underneath it and a lack of gravel, if you will, that's supposed to be there.
Could I just interject? I don't want to cut you off on time being very short tonight. I think what Bob's trying to say is that time has been a limiting factor.
Right.
And weather. However, I'll give you a hopeful note that I know he's probably going to get to. And that is that when we create the DPW director, town engineer position as part of the DPW reorganization, we're finally going to have a staff person, the town engineer, whose job is to come up with this road plan. That will be the town engineer's number one job. We've heard the board's directive to get this done. I would say over the course of the summer and the fall, while we have the weather to do it, by the fall of next year, before now, but probably as part of the budget cycle, we will be presenting the board with our very first road management plan that will seek to maximize whatever resources we have to do as much preventative maintenance as we can and do intervention strategies so that they're cost effective. Right now, the limiting factor is Bob's a one-man show. It's just physically impossible even with an intern, but later this year we'll have much more robust capability. As far as Larry's idea about using OPEB, I think it's an absolutely phenomenally great idea.
I wasn't using OPEB, it was if we were to
I mean,
consider.
OPEB and roads,
Right, yeah.
I think it's a phenomenal idea, and, you know, after discussing it with them, you're gonna see it in the budget presentation in just a few minutes. Staff and I have talked about it, Randy, Bob, we are all absolutely convinced it's a great idea. Meals tax will be essentially found money. We agree, good idea not to put it into the operating budget, but rather use it to do those projects that the town could not afford to do otherwise. And road maintenance is real high on the list. And with another $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 a year going into road maintenance, that almost doubles our road maintenance budget. Now we can make serious inroads on road maintenance with that kind of money. So we think it's a great idea.
So it looks like you're off the hook until things,
For a little while.
you know, but. Alrighty, anything else for them? Okay, appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
He's going to be back to chat with you about the holder whenever you're ready for
Right.
that.
Do you want to do it now so he doesn't have to hang around if he doesn't want to? Or
Sure. If
Wanna
might
take it?
make logical sense.
Okay.
Bob,
Yeah.
you want to come back for a second?
Board had asked the question last week about the Bombardier tractor.
Right.
Very extraordinary cost of $133,000.
I want to pass it to the audience in case they want to look at it.
And I was not able to give you a very eloquent answer about why that darn thing is so expensive. So he asked that Bob get some background info, which he got, and sent it up here. But really, to be honest with you, Bob is the guy who's the expert, and I think he can satisfy your concern and explain why that piece is so expensive and has a good long life.
Unfortunately, these sidewalk plows, which are the track-mounted units you see running around town during the storms and after the storms, they're only made by one company, thus probably the biggest reason why they're so expensive. They are built in what I would call a Cadillac Mercedes process, where they're exceptionally reliable. The production on them, or how fast they go, if you will, is really, really tremendous. And there's just no competition. That's probably why they're so expensive. We have two of them now, but neither one had a snow blower. I noticed in the literature you did receive, it was always kind of advertised just a Bombardier snow blower, but it's a combination snow blower and sidewalk plow. It would be replacing one of our existing sidewalk plows that we have that's an 87 and really pretty old and getting on. But you can see the reliability in that it still services us pretty well. Unfortunately, the 2 units we have are incapable of putting a snow blower on them. These new models, which I think have been out 2 or 3 years now, they can now have a snow blower. They're designed that way. Probably even more reason why they're more expensive. They're 100% run by hydraulic systems. There's no chains or belts for the drives or anything like that. And anytime you use hydraulics, as in with all heavy construction equipment, you're looking at a huge sum of money. So that's mainly the reasons why that it is so expensive. And I couldn't find a different unit if I tried.
So when you go out to bid for that, there'll be multiple bids, but only one manufacturer?
Correct.
So the difference in bids will be whatever margin the local distributor wants to make or not make?
Exactly.
And who would be some of the typical folks who might bid on something like that?
The local rep that we get our parts from is named Chadwick Barras out of Chelmsford, and I'm not sure what other ones will be bidding. I'm not exactly sure who the Western Mass person is, to be honest with you, or the New Hampshire one or anything like that. So I really won't know until we bid it. We did buy one of these, I think it was 8 years ago, and we bid that, and we received some bids on that. So it is something that we bid, but exactly as you say, Larry, it'll only be representative companies of that manufacturer.
Okay.
Surprisingly, they don't have their territories sliced out where they...
Can't compete with each other? Have you talked to local companies like Norfolk Power and asked them their thoughts or ideas, or is all the towns using this one company? There's no other solution out there?
No, I don't know of any other equipment really that'll do the job. Every town uses these.
Okay.
There are other snow blowers out there, but they don't have they're not track mounted. They don't have the ability to plow. We try to only snow blow if we have to, because that process takes so much longer. This past winter, our sidewalk plows just pretty much became useless. As they went through those big windrows on the sidewalks, while the tank-mounted units could still go through them, as soon as they went by, the snow just came right back in behind them. It was just a bad situation with all that snow. It would certainly really, really help us if we had a snow blower in addition to a sidewalk plow that could be this dependable. This would be our only 100% hydraulic snow blower that we have, and they really are a lot more dependable just because they're hydraulic. There aren't any others really on the market.
So you don't see high maintenance costs with it, and your mechanics can handle it and take care of everything?
Oh yeah, that's no problem at all.
Okay.
Great. Anything else for Bob?
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, if it pleases the board, we do need a vote on the capital improvement budget from the board tonight in order to get into the warrant. So if the board's concerns were satisfied, we'd appreciate that. If not, then tell us what more you need, and we will do it.
That was the only question.
That was the only question, I think, yeah.
Right? So I'd
So
entertain
I'd make a motion, we approve to put on the warrant the CIP budget as presented.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And the board takes a separate vote on the 5-year capital budget, which isn't really an approval, it's to endorse it, and we use that for our disclosure documents for bonding purposes. That's a separate vote.
Do you need that tonight, too?
Yes, please.
I'd make a motion, we endorse the 5-year capital budget plan as presented.
Any other discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, Diana.
Thank you.